Good evening, everyone. As Sandy mentioned, I'm Tom Bonigut. I don't have a PowerPoint. I'm going to be low tech. I have this board. I'll leave it here if you want to peruse it after. I'll come back to this in a moment. I'm only going to speak for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, give you a little bit of overview of some, I think, exciting programs that are coming up that you're going to hear a lot more about as we enter 2015. As Sandy mentioned, it was already now 4 years ago, the city, in collaboration with San Clemente Green, that was the spark, and a sustainable action committee. We put together the city's first sustainability action plan that the city council approved, and had a number of initiatives that were geared largely towards the city organization itself to become more efficient in all of our operations. For example, reducing energy use, water use, solid waste, and getting more things to recyclables, but also as a guide for the community in general. And that was an important piece that led to our climate action plan, which is our policy document that helps the city comply with state mandates to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions that are attributable to the city of San Clemente, for example, related to energy use from buildings, transportation, etc. And both of those documents were important pieces that fed into the Centennial General Plan that was just adopted earlier this year. And so now the city has council-approved policies, and perhaps some of you were involved with that advisory committee in that process to put together that general plan. And so now we have these environmental initiatives as formal adopted goals, policies, and actual implementation measures that we need to go, that we've committed to as a community to go implement. So one of the challenges, and so we want to reduce energy use, we want to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, we want to become more environmentally sustainable in our operations. And one of the challenges is to deal with generally the higher upfront cost of some of these initiatives, like if you want to go solar. Even though the cost of solar is dropping, it can still be a fairly high upfront cost to ask someone to go out there and finance or come up with $20,000 to $30,000 for a system, depending on the size of the property. And we also have these challenges because a lot of our greenhouse gas emissions come from energy and gas use related to heating and cooling and operating buildings. And while California has now a fairly rigorous updated building code, they call it the Green Code, so new buildings are required to be really very energy efficient, that doesn't generally address what we call the older building stock, homes that have been around for decades that otherwise wouldn't have any incentive or requirement to become more energy efficient, and unless someone does perhaps a major remodel that is subject to newer building codes. So how do we get to those things? Well, we want to encourage people to retrofit, upgrade their homes, do these improvements, do energy efficiency improvements to reduce their energy footprint and use. And I mentioned the high cost of some of these things can really be a barrier, and depending on the payback period, it sometimes can be, understandably a lot for someone to swallow if they don't know they're going to be in their home long enough to realize the payback period on some of these things. So to help with that, I'm pleased to announce or roll out. We talked about it at a recent council meeting, but the council has approved our city to join two, as Sandy mentioned, PACE programs. It stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy Programs. It's basically a financing vehicle that is similar to a traditional assessment. And those of you who are property owners in town, up until a few years ago, you had a local assessment, for example, street improvements, and it showed up as a line item on your property tax bill. This works the same way, except it's voluntary. We have entered into a district, but you don't have to do anything, and you don't get assessed until you voluntarily sign up and apply to the program. So it's totally up to you as a property owner. But the exciting thing is there are some benefits that are unique to this kind of a financing model that are different if you try to do a private financing, like through a home equity loan or line of credit. It's an easier underwriting process. It's really not tied to personal income or your credit rating. So it doesn't matter what your FICO score is, it doesn't matter what your income requirements are, because the account actually gets a lien on the property, it's not a private loan. Generally, it stays with the property too, which is one of the key important aspects. So you don't have to now kind of have that mental calculation in your head, am I going to be in my house 5 years or 10 years or however long it takes to recoup the cost of the investment for these energy efficiency improvements. You sell your home, and generally, with some exception, that lien stays with the property, the new property owner assumes it. They know that going in, there's all the disclosures, but again, you start realizing the benefits of the energy improvements right away. There's no money down, so there's no money out of pocket. It's just an annual assessment that goes on your property tax bill. So I have listed 3 programs here, and again, I know the print is hard to read, but you can, if you want to take notes. Council did approve 2 programs. One's called the California First Program, another is called the Hero Financing Program. These are all these are legitimate programs. They run in many communities throughout the state already, and they're making a bigger push into Orange County more recently. And so only a few months ago with that, the council approved joining those. What that means is we had to do just basically some legal setup work to join these programs. There's no cost to the city to do it. And now they're going through the back-end process of setting up the programs, they being the program administrators. Basically, these are essentially private operators operating under some semi-public authorities. And so you're working with a public entity. It's not a city-run or city financing. It's back-end private capital, but it's not like a private loan. That's why we have these benefits. So those are approved. There's a third one that the council will consider this coming Tuesday, which I hope they will pass since it's the same as the others. And it applies to any property in town, whether it's commercial or residential. So if you own business, commercial property, you can use these programs to help finance improvements on your property as well. And we expect this time that probably in early 2015, maybe February plus or minus, is when you can expect to hear announcements about that the programs are open and you can actually go to the websites. You would go to these websites, put in your community information and start a process there. They can fund a wide range of energy efficiency improvements. These are the most common I have listed here, but when we talk about renewables, things like solar panels, solar water heating are the most common in that category. They will fund water efficiency improvements, everything from taking out turf to artificial turf, putting it in, lower water use landscaping, high efficiency water fixtures in your home, and then a number of just general energy efficiency improvements, window glazing, just anything you can think of, air conditioning, heating, cooling. There are so many things that we can collectively do to improve the efficiency of our buildings and generate renewable electricity. So again, I'm going to leave this up here. And this isn't to replace any other funding vehicles you may want to choose. We are trying to opt into as many programs as possible to basically increase competition and increase choices. So you may find, for example, in your particular situation, depending on how much you want to finance and what period of time, that a home equity loan is a better deal for you. But this does give some competitive rate financing. Generally, right now, it's in the 6 to 8% range, depending on how much in the term. But the private funding, like I mentioned, doesn't have some of the options on keeping it on the property tax bill and the easier underwriting process. So that's my really quick capsule summary. I'm really excited. I've been trying to do these programs for several years. There were some, bigger picture national and state legal issues to get through. There are literally already thousands of people in other communities who have gone through the program. The HERO program alone has done 19,000 projects all over the state, concentrating primarily in Southern California, but they're going statewide. And California First also has thousands of people under their umbrella. Fig Tree was primarily a commercial property, and they're moving into residential. So the idea is it just gives you another option and a way to try and do some of these improvements without having to come up front with the money and provide an easy repayment schedule, simple interest repayment. That's my council summary. Does anyone have any questions for me about these programs and what we can do? Yes, sir.
Do you know if anybody's trying to get the federal government to do a tax break on those interest payments?
Well, I don't know about a tax break on interest payments, and I'm not a CPA or a tax attorney, but I am told that the interest portion generally is considered tax deductible, but check with your attorney or CPA, that's my disclaimer. There are certain incentives for programs. For example, if you do solar panels, there is a federal 30% tax credit, what they call a top of the line credit, comes right off the top to reduce your tax burden. And that's still going through, at least currently this tax year and into next. So there are some other incentives, and one of the benefits is, unlike programs where you get into perhaps a lease program through some of these solar companies, you own, for the example with solar, that means you get the benefit of the tax credit and so forth. If you do a lease program, the other company gets that credit and you don't. So, was there any other questions for me? I'm going to stick around for a little while till 7. I have another meeting across the hall, and I'm happy to answer questions. You can contact me through Gary's group, San Clemente Green, but it's meetings like this, interested people like you that we're all counting on to not only hopefully pursue some of these improvements on your properties. I hope you find that it's going to be beneficial to do that if you haven't already, and I know some of you have. But to get the word out and get people excited, we are looking for a grant that I think we're going to get from an organization to be named that will help us do some more intense marketing outreach. These programs will do outreach on their own, but come January, February, I think also the city, we will try and strive to do some direct mailers, web banner advertising, whatever we can to let people know that this is another option available to you to help you, pursue energy efficiency, or now, with the drought, water efficiency improvements are also, we get a double bang for the buck. We save water and we save the energy used to get the water down here. So, that's all I
That's what you're doing to the other communities. I'm thinking San Juan, Dana Point.
I have my counterparts in San Juan and Dana Point. We're sharing information. I offered to share all the reports I put together. I can't speak to what their intentions or timelines are. I don't believe they're in a process at this point, but we collaborate, but ultimately it's up to those cities in what their desire is. So if any of you have contacts or you live in other communities or have friends, you might want to maybe give them a gentle nudge to nudge their elected leaders to give them direction to go pursue these. Yes, ma'am.
Do you do any studies for like water usage and electrical uses? I mean, you have the ability, I know you do for water, figure out which areas, whether it's like Old San Clemente, Tolega, Forester, like the designs, have they used more water in different areas, and are you reflecting that in your new designs with current projects that are going forward as to energy efficiency and water conservation?
Well, any new design or any new building, any new project falls under the Cal Green Codes, and so by definition, they're already more efficient than what they used to be.
Well, I'm wondering, I'm thinking some of the older houses and stuff that are 1,500 square feet, I bet those are more efficient and use less energy than say maybe a 3,000 square foot house. And
You'd be surprised, maybe not. I would not make that assumption.
have you done any of those studies?
I bet you a 3,000 square foot home built last year is more efficient than a 1,500 square foot home built in 1930.
You can see the electrical usage.
Of course, it all depends on the occupants and what they're doing, but in terms of the structure, the improvements, and yeah. So, but I don't think I answered that part of your question. We may have the ability to track water usage. That's not my bailiwick. On the utilities water tracking side, we're trying to roll out any and every program. We also have separate rebate incentive programs to deal with water use. We have a lot of incentives to try and get our water use down. We're also trying to expand. We are expanding our recycled water use. That project just came online, so there are a lot of programs too. If you go to ocwatersmart.org, there's another great resource with incentives and rebates. So we do track energy use. I have to every 5 years at minimum and more kind of look at the sectors and see where the energy use is by commercial, residential. Because we do need to start reporting that to the state and show how we're working towards meeting our greenhouse gas reduction goals. And programs like these and participation by you people is the way we're going to get there.
That's my question. How do you track the changes?
We work with the utility companies and we get data from them. I don't track anyone's individual use. We don't go to that kernel. That's all private, so we're not, I live in town too and I don't like big government, but we do aggregate data by just, residential accounts in general, commercial accounts, and we get that from the utility providers.
We get a baseline too for the climate action plan?
There's a baseline, so, and all that information is on the city's website. If you go to where the Centennial General Plan is located, you can drill down, you can see the climate action plan. It's there, it's actually one of the appendices to that general plan, and you'll see what we did when we developed that a few years ago, our baseline, and so we have hard numbers. We actually have targets that we are working towards meeting. It's not a kind of fuzzy, ill-defined goal. It's quite clear on what we need to do to determine if we're successful or not. There was a question here.
The state programs have a website. What about the San Clemente PACE program? Is there a website? Or
We will put information on the city's website, but we will always point to these programs because that's ultimately where you have to go. They are the program administrators. And so when we get closer to a program rollout, the question was, about the website. And so we will carve out a place that's very prominent on our city webpage if people are inclined to go there. And that'll be sort of like the traffic control. This is okay, if you're interested in this, here's the resources you go to, and we'll also make that prominent in any outreach we do. Any other, I don't want to take up, I know Devin has a lot of time, maybe one or two more questions, and I'll, yes ma'am?
Yeah, I noticed that there was a drawing or something for getting your house checked out for energy efficiency. Is there an organization or the utility, would they come into your home and offer suggestions to make your electricity use
So the
more
question has to do with sort of energy use audits, to see, you know, they're not required for these programs. I could not tell you off the top of my head if SDG&E offers these programs. What we'll make sure to do in our outreach before, because we don't want to just outreach on a program. When we're going to take the opportunity to do that, we just want to provide a resource on all sorts of programs that are out there. We will make sure to summarize what SDG&E and the utility providers offer, and if we're aware of any other services by any organizations where they can come and give energy audits. I know there's people out there, I just don't know if, for example, San Diego Gas and Electric offers that. But they haven't sent the rebates page. I should have thought to put it on here, I don't, but if you go to their main webpage and search on incentives, hopefully they have it pretty prominently. And was there one more? Yes, sir.
How do you screen the energy audit people who get calls all the time? And whether legitimate or whether they're casing your house or what they're doing?
Well, we don't, we, the city, don't screen them, we're not affiliated with them.
How do we screen them?
So, well, you
Get
know,
calls.
however you would normally screen any contractor, you're gonna invite them to do work. And so, you know, it's kind of like your research,
Then you
reviews.
just say no.
But that's a great question though, in terms of, and that leads me, if I could segue, these programs pre-qualify contractors. So there are only certain contractors, and it's a whole range, but not just anyone can say, because they work with, and the contractors get certified and screened so that they know the funding process. The programs have their own screening process. We have companies in San Clemente who are already working in the HERO program in other cities. So when you use and when you go through this program, you know, at least have some reasonable assurance that there is going to be a reputable contractor who knows what they are doing with regard to these energy efficiency. They will all be, you'll only be able to use the authorized contractors, although there are a number to choose from, so you're not, you know, going to be limited. You can still get estimates and so forth. But you'll just ask, are you certified by the HERO program? And all these programs will have them listed, so you can do your own third-party verification and not rely simply on the contractor's word to say, yes, they're listed here. So thank you for that. Okay, well, I thank you for your time, and stay tuned. We will get information out, and I hope you avail yourselves of this opportunity. Thank you.